Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for today's Lunch with Hallie. We are doing our annual Staffing World recap. We're going to share what we saw, what we heard, and what we learned from this year's conference. And this year, we had a great group of people attend. We had our co-CEO, David Stearns, myself, Brad Smith, Susan Wurst, Kathy Duffy, Lindsay Riggs, and Matt Lozar join us. And they are all on today's webinar, with the exception of David Stearns, who had a scheduling conflict. So welcome all. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's agenda, we're going to cover a lot. So if you've been to this webinar in the past, you know that we try to cram a lot into an hour, but hopefully we're going to have some really solid takeaways for you all. We're going to talk about the keynotes. So there were some very high-level speakers that the American Staffing Association brought in. If you've been to a Staffing World before, you know that the caliber of speakers they bring in are terrific. If you haven't, make sure that you sign up next year. The event is amazing. The speakers are wonderful. The breakout sessions are led by some of the top minds in the staffing industry. And there's just so many lessons learned that we can't cram it all into 1 hour, but we're going to do our best here. So we're going to start off by talking about the keynotes. And I was very excited coming into this event when I saw the list. And Coach K, the famous basketball coach from Duke, the USA Olympic coach, Mike K, Coach K, is a master motivator. And he shared some great high-level tips for us. And while he didn't design this speech specifically for the staffing industry, it's amazing how many parallels there are to building a great workforce and building a great collegiate and Olympic team. And he talked about 3 areas they consider at Duke and with USA Basketball when they're evaluating people, when they're evaluating teammates. And of course, it started off with talent. So do they have the talent? Do they have the skills needed to be successful in this role? Obviously, if you're going for a national championship or you're looking to earn the gold medal, you need to have some of the most talented people in your profession, in the sport, to join your team. But talent alone isn't enough. You can have the most talented people, and we saw that with USA Basketball for years. They collected the most talented individuals, but they couldn't play as a team. So Coach K had to adapt. And their next key area they looked at was environment. How will they fit into our environment? As an end employer, as a staffing agency, how will extremely talented people fit in our environment? Will their talent fit in? Will they butt heads with each other? Will they play off of each other and have amazing teamwork together? We need to ask ourselves all of those questions and not just be attracted to the shiny object, not just be attracted to the most talented person, raw talent. We need to make sure that they fit in. And the next key was character. And he was very clear about this. And it was extremely important at Duke and very important when they went on to win gold medals with the USA Olympic team. They looked at whether or not you were a good person. They would watch the relationship with teammates. They'd watch the relationship with parents. They'd watch those they interact with, both on and off the court. How were they when they were walking to the locker room? How were they after the game? Did they talk to people? Were they dismissive? He looked at all of those things to judge a person's character, and character is extremely important to the success and the health of your team. Next, he identified some core standards, and these were core standards that carried through once you found and selected the right people to join your team. These core standards were things that he held everyone accountable for. And number 1 was communication. We need to make sure that we communicate at all levels. We need to build trust. We need to be able to trust that what you're saying, you're going to follow through and do. As a leader, we need to make sure that our teams trust us, and we need to set the right example. We need to make sure that we support each other. We need to have each other's backs. If somebody falls down on the court, if somebody gets fouled hard, we are going to be there to pick them back up. The same is true in the workplace. We need to support each other and make sure that everyone understands there's a team behind them. They're not alone. He talked about collective responsibility. And what this means is that you're going to win and lose as a team. Okay. It's not about individuals. It's winning and losing as a team. When somebody's down, we're going to lift them up. When somebody's doing well, we're all going to share in that success. And if you build collective responsibility across your entire organization, you'll achieve amazing things. Then he talked about pride. And there's some inherent pride of playing basketball at Duke or playing for the US Olympic team, obviously. But we need to be proud to represent the organizations that we work in. Okay? You can't fake that. That'll come through. If we're proud of where we work, if we're proud of the work that we're doing, that's going to shine through. And that's going to make people want to work with you. And finally, he talked about 3 A's of leadership. And number 1, we need agility. We need to be fast. We need to assume the next move. We need to know where the ball is going, not where it is. We need to know where our industry is heading, not where it is right now. We need to be adaptable. And this one was really interesting. And he shared that he has had to drastically change the way he coaches because of how people have changed. Our attention spans right now are shortened dramatically. He has had to alter the way that he approaches his new teams. And as leaders, we need to be aware of that. Sometimes it's not them, sometimes it's us. We need to adjust. And finally, accountability. He said, unfortunately, it's not alive and well. Some people are scared to be accountable. Some leaders are scared to hold people accountable. And we need to do that if we're going to drive our organizations forward. And then he added a 4th A that I didn't list here, but that was a winning attitude. You need to believe in what you're doing, and you need to know that you have the opportunity to be successful. If you come into things thinking that you're not going to be successful, you won't. And I love this quote that he ended with. At Duke and for USA basketball, he said, "We recruited talent with character, not talented characters." So don't get wooed by all the skills, all the talent in the world. You need to make sure that they have character, that they're the right person for your organization, and they fit in. And the same goes for the positions that you're recruiting for. All right, that was Coach K. Next, big topic for this year's event was around AI and technology. And Paul from IBM is leading the charge in AI. And he shared the good, the bad, and the ChatGPT. So first and foremost, he talked about evaluating tech spends. Over the last 4 or 5 years, organizations, especially in the staffing industry, have really invested heavily in their tech stack. But he suggested that we all take a moment to evaluate that spend and ask 2 key questions. Number 1, does it save you money? And number 2, does it help you sell more? If it doesn't fit those 2, you truly need to evaluate whether it makes sense to keep in your organization. I'm not saying just drop it completely, but if you find that you're not using a tech platform to its fullest potential, so it's not saving you money or it's not helping you sell more, look at ways that you can better leverage that technology. Look at ways that you can change your process or eliminate cost to have it drive value to the bottom line. He introduced the concept of ambient technology, and I really loved this one. If you think about your room right now that you're sitting in, I'm sure you have some ambient lighting. You would never think of this as life-altering, right? We're just used to it. But having that ambient light helps us work more efficiently, effectively, and helps us be more productive. And when we think about AI and technology, we need to make sure that we allow tech to assist us, but it doesn't have to get in the way, just like your ambient lighting. We need to reduce the cost of not understanding data. We've been great at collecting data for years, but ambient technology and AI can help us use all of that data that we've collected in our ATSs or in our CRMs and use it more effectively and efficiently. We, again, need to use this to make better business decisions. And technology can be that, AI can be that ambient technology to help you do that. He did have some words of caution, though. We need to make sure that as an industry, we eliminate bias. AI makes connections with no moral consequences. Okay, we need to make sure that we're looking at that. For example, facial recognition. There's bias in online interviewing. There's bias in AI technology and facial recognition. He shared a great example of a lack of dermatologists, and AI is now being used to help with detecting melanoma. because 75% of the US can't get in to see a dermatologist. For white Caucasians, AI has a 90% success rate at identifying potential skin cancer concerns. But for African Americans, it's only 73% effective because of limited data. You need to understand this so that limited data with AI doesn't introduce and expand bias. And then finally, Paul shared a story about how AI plus human will beat AI alone. And there's a lot of concern out there that AI is just going to replace jobs. Well, I don't think AI is going to replace the recruiter, but I think AI might replace the recruiter that doesn't use AI. So we need to embrace it. And the example he shared was with high-level chess players. And what he found was that high-level chess players, when playing only against the AI, lost 100% of the time. But if you give high-level chess players the opportunity to use AI and then ultimately make the decision that makes the most sense, they beat the AI the majority of the time. So again, AI can be a great tool for us. We can't ignore it, but we can't rely on it solely. And next, I'm going to pass it over to Susan to talk about another great speaker, Dominique Dawes.
Thanks, Brad. Yes, Dominique Dawes. For those of you who don't know who she is, she was a member of the Magnificent Seven, which was the first women's U.S. gymnastics team to win an Olympic gold medal. Now she is a mother of four, owner of two businesses, one of which she opened up during the pandemic. And during this keynote, she talked about her approach that she calls D3, determination, dedication, and desire. And it was this approach that gave her the strength and confidence to handle the professional and personal challenges that she's had in her life. So one of the things she talked about was you won't succeed unless you work as a team. And even if the nature of what you're doing is individual. So if you think about it, gymnastics is really unique as a sport because by its nature, you're also competing against your own team members. And she told a story about when the Magnificent Seven were compiled and they all came together to practice. They didn't really interact with each other. They were just focused on themselves. And during those practices and living together, getting ready for the Olympics, the coaches did some things to break down those barriers. And it was only when they started talking to each other and checked their egos did they start succeeding as a team. So she talked about if everyone is too focused on their individual goals, your company won't succeed. Another point that she made was stay true to your original vision and mission. She kept this philosophy both in her athletic career as well as her professional career. She said, people may cause you to doubt yourself, but stick with your North Star and you'll succeed. And then she also talked about you can train skill, you can't train character, very similar to the first keynote. When hiring, she recommended asking questions that align with your company values. This has been a longtime belief of mine as well. And in fact, at Haley Marketing, as part of our interview process, we ask questions that align with our core values. You can train, as previously said, you can train skill, you can't train values. All right, I'm going to pass it back to you, Brad.
Thank you so much, Susan. And as you can see, there were some very high-level keynote speakers there. But then what's great about ASA is they will go through and develop some sessions that are very specific and tactical and focused on the industry and even specific sectors of the industry. So I'm going to ask Kathy to talk about our first session on trending technology.
Thanks, Brad. This panel featured industry experts Tom Erb from Talent Resources, Hope Bradford from Kelly, David Francis from Talent Tech Labs, and it was facilitated by Jim Essie from Temp Positions Group of Companies. This session was a treasure trove of insights on how AI is going to transform various parts of our industry. It's not just about the future, it's about the here and the now. On the panel, they shared guidance on new tools and solutions that can enhance the efficiency, reduce manual work, improve candidate engagement, and then also address new challenges. Some of the tools that they shared to enhance sales, which was a pretty fun part of the presentation or the panel, were they had AI-powered meeting assistants that help with the efficiency of sales professionals. So if you've ever found yourself on a call and you're trying to focus and pay attention and take notes and track your next action items, you'll know that it's very stressful and distracting, and you probably will miss something very important. Well, AI can step in as a virtual assistant that's actually recording and transcribing and analyzing your meetings. It does help you stay organized, and it remembers your next steps so that you can really focus on the conversation that you're having with the person on the other end of the phone. Some of the vendors even integrate with CRMs for storing the meeting notes, which is really helpful. And I know here at Haley Marketing, we do use a solution here that's a virtual assistant. And I can tell you that I love this technology, and it's very helpful and time saving. And I'm pretty forgetful sometimes, so it does remind me on certain things. You can also say goodbye to traditional paper business cards that also, they often get lost in drawers or forgotten. There's digital business cards, which offer like a quick, impressive way for you to exchange contact information when you're on the go at a conference or at an event. It allows for a quick scan, and your contact information ends up into the recipient's smartphone. Some platforms even come with a custom landing page where you can include your contact details, your social media links, and even if you wrote a book and you want to promote that as well, you can provide access to that. In terms of personal branding, and this I actually chuckled on it because I've played around with this type of technology before, but instead of going to a professional photographer and spending tons of money, you can actually upload your existing photos and AI will generate professional headshots for you. It is very important to note that there are many variations in the results. To get the best outcome, it's super important to upload as many pictures as you can. So don't do 3, do 20, 25, front facing so it can understand what you look like. And then to get the best outcome is really ask input from the people around you, people that look at you every single day. Maybe that's family, friends, people you work with, so you can choose the most accurate photo of you. From Tom's story and my personal experience, the more pictures you can upload, the better. You might end up looking like somebody completely different or even having an extra arm. So more is better in this case. The room got hyped about what AI can do in human resources and practical examples that could be used today. It's not just knocking on HR's door anymore, it actually is moving in, right? So AI is going to bring fresh insights into employee performance. It'll help us deal with biases and errors. It even teaches HR some new tricks. Models like ChatGPT are game changers in the space already, which are reshaping HR from the ground up. Before this session, I heard the term co-pilots quite often, which you may have also. But basically, for those that don't know what it is, co-pilot just simply means it's a company with an existing software application that has a large or generative AI capability in its own system to help you do something. That something can be help with tasks from reducing manual workloads, writing job descriptions, matching and cloning to identify the right candidates, screening, performance assessments, and even coaching, summarizing a candidate profile, and then even generating the pitch for that job. The integration and processing of various forms of data at the same time, such as text, audio, images, and video, even opens the door to more innovative recruiting methods like voice screening, where the system can create the interview, actually administer the interview, and provide a candidate score and summary back to the human recruiter, which I thought was pretty cool. I think a little more work needs to be done in that area to make it more natural, but I thought that was pretty neat. So while AI has huge potential, it's important to keep an eye on it. It does have a lot of hiccups. AI models, again, like ChatGPT, can sometimes goof up and give us weird information. They caution that in a couple of the different sessions where they talk about AI is hallucinating. So sometimes they'll make up stuff that just isn't true, and they're very confident about it. So the big takeaway here is that AI isn't here to replace humans, which is good news. It's really just here to enhance our capabilities. So it may change what we do, but for the staffing industry, we will evolve. We will shift responsibilities and jobs and our skill sets. So it's important to think of AI tools as secret weapons that help us work smarter, not harder, and also to make candidates happier and tackle new challenges effortlessly. And so now I'll hand it off to you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Kathy. How to effectively market your benefits to recruit and retain top talent. This session was hosted by Marco Nunez. He is the Vice President of Operations of Essential Staff Care, ESC. And the conversation really was geared toward the HR and C-level decision makers within the staffing industry to start to look at how we can thrive in challenging labor markets and what type of opportunities do we have to increase recruiting and retention, and what does that power look like for the different benefits. It is a new era, Marco said, and I think we all know that and understand that, but what can we do a little bit differently to start attracting candidates and having benefits offered to them that are outside of the box? Benefits need to be more than what they have been. Traditionally, he said it's been a benefit package. You get to choose maybe one type of healthcare and that's it. Now we need to think differently. What else can we provide for the upcoming generations and also the new world itself? What are they being driven by? People not only look for the money aspect and the pay, but also the benefits are equally, if not more important to them now. The more choices and benefits does not necessarily mean more value. Marco specifically stated analysis paralysis. If there are too many options, we might freeze up and we might not make a good choice. And he said that there are numbers shown from ESC's data that explain how people will not choose any benefits because there are too many to choose from and they do not know where to go from there. To market and recruit by implementing virtual healthcare was another topic that Marco mentioned is a fantastic benefit, especially post 2020 and moving into a different era of how individuals work. And he did talk about how mental health care is the number one item that people and talent are looking for in an offering from a recruiting agency or a staffing agency or a recruiter in general. What does that look like? Our schedules are busy. Can we get to the doctor? Can we not? We need that virtual health care. He suggested looking into what type of options can you offer to retain and attract this talent with the virtual health care. It's here to stay beyond COVID, and it is better access for all, virtual affordability, and allowing people to make better decisions for themselves. The new generation is really changing the game in this space and what it means to be employed. So he did empower everyone in the room to start having these conversations internally on what they can do to improve to attract and retain this talent. You should always be assessing. You should always analyze and then reconfigure your differentiation of benefits to stay ahead of the game. And I'm going to pass it off to Matt Lozar. Thank you.
Before you go, Lindsay, we have a question. There's
Okay.
a question from me. It talks about benefits driven by reality of importance to them. And you know, what exactly did that mean in the talk?
The reality of the importance was really came down to it when it was a surprising stat that he shared, Matt, that pay is number one, but a close second is what are those benefits and what does that look like? So I think the room kind of gasped in a way of, I didn't realize how important this was. And we need to kind of reevaluate this. So he really was trying to focus in on making sure that everyone knew that the current generations coming up, this is one of their number one topics that they want to see come out of this.
And I was really surprised to see how important mental health support was for those generations. So
Absolutely.
that one shift can be a game changer in whether or not you're able to attract and retain talent.
Thank you for the question, Mia. Thanks for the answers, Lindsay and Brad there. And I'm going to jump in here and talk about where I gave a talk at Staffing World on how to level up your recruitment marketing to compete and win. We built off the theme at Pele Marketing here this year of leveling up, and was pretty appreciative to be selected to speak at Staffing World, which was awesome. And while we've seen a lot of conversation about sales this year in the industry, the room still had a lot of interest in recruiting. So at Haley Marketing on our recruitmentmarketers.com website, we've talked about everything it takes to get the right people to apply to your open jobs. And that seems to be the challenge as we focus on the 4 pillars of recruitment marketing here: career sites, job advertising, social recruiting, and employer branding. Companies are getting applies. The challenge is really coming down to getting the right people or getting more quality applications. And that could mean, anything and everything across those 4 pillars. Where I gave an example during the talk, there was a job for a company in Northwest Ohio, Southeast Michigan area, one of our clients, but it talks about it's a general labor job. And the opening of each of those job postings, one talks about, do you want to have 3-day weekends? Do you want to work longer, 4 days, 10-hour days? The other one talks about, do you want overtime or the opportunity for overtime? And it's very important for that because that candidate is very different. Someone may not be able to work on the weekends because of family obligations, or may need to have another second job on top of that, while the person who wants to work overtime might be able to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week at a moment's notice. So it's a basic job of just an industrial worker, but having that right candidate fit there, because if you hire someone for a job that requires overtime that can't do overtime, quickly nobody wins and everybody gets frustrated. And that's where getting the right people to apply to your jobs is really important here. So some areas that can help you level up the recruitment marketing. This has been a common theme that I've talked about. We've talked about on the Insights podcast: reduce friction and thinking like a consumer, or how do you avoid losing all those candidates? Really important, because we carry over trends we see in, retail, traditional purchasing world, and bringing it over to staffing and recruiting. What's it like when someone goes to your website? Is it easy for them to engage? How can you not lose them quickly? Do you have a chat bot that can respond to them in some capacity to make their needs felt heard? On the job application part, how quickly can someone apply? Is it simple on mobile versus desktop? On social recruiting, is it, the content they want to see? In employer branding as well, which I'll talk about in a little bit. What's in it for me? A great acronym, WIIFM, that really needs to focus on the job candidate, not the job seeker. Ties back into that example of overtime versus not overtime for a job posting, something simpler like that. Or anytime they read that content, why am I engaging with it? Can I see myself at this company? The photos on your website, the text on your website, the content on your social pages, anything in the job advertisement, that from the title to the salary to the benefits that Lindsay just talked about. How does that connect with me, and why am I engaging with it? And how does it, help me picture myself at this job? Lastly, and this is a big talking point that feels like it's a differentiator right now to get that quality, provide the great employment experience. And this stat here, I learned from Brad Biley on our team, but I am guilty as charged. 96% of people look for negative reviews. And when we look at reviews, it's not that we're always looking to have that confirmation of, oh, these are the great parts of it. It's almost like, what am I willing to put up with? So that's when people look for those negative reviews. 3.3 stars can be the lowest acceptable rating. These are more consumer-ish trends, but they're going to carry over to us. So look at your star ratings on Indeed and Google and Facebook, and proactively get reviews, because when people get rejected for a job, a lot of people get rejected for a job. There's one person that gets the job, a lot of opportunity to have those negative reviews. And lastly,
if I could add one thing there, those negative reviews can have potential to turn into a positive. So if you're actively monitoring those and people are looking for negative reviews and they see that you as the company, you as the employer are responding appropriately, following up, and you show that you care, that can carry a lot of weight.
Yeah, nice honest response is great. Don't get into a verbal back and forth online, but a nice response can show that you do care and take that feedback the right way. And lastly, that employment experience isn't just when they're interviewing for a job, when they're applying for the job, or even during that onboarding. It's all aspects of it, from that interview onboarding process, day 1, day 5, day 90. All of those contribute to a great employment experience, can help you get quality candidates consistently. That's all for me. I'm going to shift it back over here to Susan.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, this next session, Banish Burnout, Move from Stress to Success, was presented by Janice Lippin, who is the author of a book by the same title. One of the first things that she did was went through the top 3 causes of stress, which are uncertainty, lack of information, and lack of control. And she asked us all to think about, as leaders, are we unknowingly causing stress to our coworkers and our team when we look at those top 3 causes? And she gave a frightening statistic. I could not believe this. 1.25 billion annual healthcare spend is due to burnout, which I found astounding. So then she went through, in her book, she has 6 tools to banish burnout. She only went through 3 of them, but the 6 are: stop, stress audit, know your success, shake it off, set healthy boundaries, and spin your stress. So she went through the practical coping mechanisms for these, and I picked out a few of my favorite ones, the ones that really resonated with me. One is the 10-10-10 rule. So take a deep breath, think about what are the consequences in 10 minutes, 10 months, and in 10 years. And then the setting healthy boundaries. People who are, and we all know this, people who always say yes are the people who get asked to do everything. So she gave a great phrase, or a way to alleviate that, is to say, I'm excited to work on this, but which of my other projects should I put on the back burner? And then my all-time favorite one, and I've actually implemented this a couple times since I attended this session, was to write it down. Stop and audit. So after a stressful situation, write by hand what happened. Your physical reactions, verbal reactions, any addictive behaviors. And what this actually does by following this exercise is it allows you to engage the prefrontal cortex. We didn't know we were getting a biology lesson, which is the logical part of the brain. Another fun fact, the more you use this, the bigger it gets. So now I'm going to turn it back to you, Brad.
Thank you, Susan. As Matt mentioned, a lot of discussion was around sales. How do we drive more business? How do we drive more business development? But the candidate shortage isn't going away. And there were still some great panels on candidate sourcing strategy. And I thought this was a great graphic that really summed up all the different areas in which we can source candidates. We've got active, passive, social media, which Matt covered, inbound through your website, and then sourcing automation. And the staffing companies and recruiting companies that are going to excel in this candidate shortage are ones that have technology and have process built into each and every one of these areas. So what does that really look like? Well, passive sourcing and referrals are focused around building trust, value, and that reputation. Matt mentioned that in his talk. It's extremely important that if you have a rating that's 3.3 or lower, you boost that. Take a proactive strategy to building more inbound reviews so that you can be one of the highest rated, most rated staffing companies in the market. That's going to go a long way into helping your employment brand, but then also helping your individual recruiters with their personal brands. So when you look at many industries, healthcare is one example. People don't necessarily work because of the company, they work because of the recruiter. So what can you do to help your recruiters build their personal brands? It will help your organization in the long run. Inbound recruitment and web sourcing, we want to make sure that we have a content marketing engine. We're talking about what candidates and employees are facing in the market right now. They might not be actively looking for a job, but they may be looking for an opportunity to ask or get a raise. Okay, that might be a leading indicator that pretty soon they are going to be looking for a job. Let's supply them with the information they need to help them to be a trusted partner. And when they do have that job change need, they're going to think about your organization. And we need to make sure that we're hitting them through email, social, search engine optimization, paid ads, job boards. We need to make sure that we're keeping our ATS data clean. And this helps a ton with automations. We need to use AI and automation to streamline our job posting, rewrite job descriptions to make them more you focused instead of we focused. Need to help with job distribution and searching and matching. There's so many amazing AI tools out there to help with that. And quick plug, our next lunch with Haley will focus on a lot of those great AI tools. For social media sourcing and networking, we need to make sure that we have very specific strategies for active and passive talent. So very different, and they're going to be looking for different things. So let's make sure we have content and we have tips and advice for each one of those areas. And then get your team involved in content sharing. Content that's shared by the individual sometimes has 10x the reach as the company. So make sure you have a plan in place to get your entire team actively involved in sharing great content. And then we can look at supercharging our sourcing and our recruiting efforts with automation. It's going to increase your speed to market. It's going to reduce your time to fill, which is huge right now. The candidate shelf life for some industrial positions might be a few hours. We need to use automation to make sure that we can place those people as quickly as possible. And then we need to ensure that we have a consistent candidate experience. Let's make sure that when they apply, they don't go untalked to for hours, days, weeks. Let's use automation to personalize that. And Matt, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk about the HR side of things.
Thank you, Brad. This talk was by Rachel Nevsky, and she has worked before starting her own business, and even now, worked on the HR side and worked on the recruiting side, a little bit different viewpoints. And from her viewpoint, the best recruiters focus on all these areas. You know, trust has been a common theme here. It feels like so far. I'm actually going to be talking about it later after a talk from Rob Mosley. But the best recruiters have trust internally, externally. The best recruiters can show empathy, especially with candidates. And earlier when I was talking about recruitment marketing and how to level it up, the biggest challenge it feels like companies have right now is getting that quality. Anybody can deliver 500 applications. They don't want to go through 500 applications. They want to go through a much smaller subset of quality applications. So the best recruiters understand that and can work together internally with the different departments to deliver on that quality. So she talked about that. Rachel talked about that with HR and marketing, and HR and recruiters as well, where if marketing understands what HR needs, they can help deliver that in just shaping the brand, shaping the employment brand. This is where recruitment marketing really came from, because marketing, when we take ourselves outside of staffing and recruiting, think of a place like McDonald's. They have a much different message for their consumer brand and their employment brand. Or if you go anywhere, you know, think of random companies, Home Depot, or see Chipotle a lot right now. They always have a nice employment brand out there. Or CVS is one I like to look at. Different brands for the HR versus marketing. So if marketing can understand what the HR and the recruiters need, they can market that. And lastly, with HR and recruiters, everyone's got to talk together to solve those problems. You know, speak with marketing together. Make sure everyone's on the same page for whoever is overseeing the job postings and job advertisements versus a job description. Build all those relationships internally, and hopefully that can help solve that quality problem with applications. Now I'm going to pass it right back over to Brad.
Thanks. This session was led by Natasha Hemingway and really resonated with me. And it talked about going from sales insecure to sales confident. Now, I don't do much selling. In fact, I say all the time that I've never sold a single thing in my life. And that's because I don't sell, I consult. And that was a big focus of her presentation. So when we're thinking about sales and selling, especially in this economy, we've thrown out a lot of numbers. And I've heard that now you need to make 200 calls before you actually get somebody and make a connection. We've heard that most salespeople give up after 2 outreach efforts when you need 5 or 6 to the same person to make an impression. And when you hear those numbers, that can create some anxiety, that can create some insecurity with your salespeople. But how do you overcome that? How do you get your salespeople more engaged, more proactive, especially ones that have never been through this challenging time? Over the last 5-10 years, we've been glorified order takers. Sales have been easy to come by. It was the candidate side that was really hard. Now we're challenged on both ends. So reps and practice are essential. You need to make sure that your reps are armed with the tools and success and word tracks and guidance they need to be successful. Otherwise, they will be insecure. And you need to understand that in order to get to the yes, you're going to have to get through a whole heck of a lot of no's and get people comfortable with that. It's okay to be told no. In sales, your whole purpose is to either get a yes or a no. And you're going to get more no's than you are yeses, and that's okay. But don't get discouraged. And as leaders, we need to make sure that we reinforce that they can get past it. Think of your prospects as in clients as people. Think of them as people. And that's why I said that I've never sold a single thing in my life. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to consult with people and help them overcome their biggest challenges. And when you frame it that way, you're never selling anything. Now, when she did talk about the 4 keys, this one really stuck out with me, and it was sell with heart, not hustle. So if you have the best interest of the prospect in mind, that's going to outperform hustle 100% of the time. How do you do that? You got to get deeper. You have to truly understand what the biggest problem is. What's keeping them up at night? What is their biggest challenge right now in their day-to-day? What's their biggest strategic challenge? If you can help get deeper and provide them with a solution, you'll never have to sell again. It will happen. And we also need to realize that price isn't the issue. People don't not buy because of the price. They don't buy because the value isn't there for the price. So we need to focus everything around value. And if we can do all of those things, then closing, as Natasha mentioned, is a non-event. Closing becomes you're inviting that person to become a client of yours. And that's where we want to get to, where closing is a non-event. All right, next, Lindsay, I'm going to pass it over to you for consumer behavior. Oh, actually, you know what, Lindsay? I'm going to tackle this one. This is another panel that I was on, and they went through and talked about how consumer behaviors are changing. And we've had a rise in the digital buyer. We've mentioned it a few times. People are going to look at reviews. They're going to look at tech. They're going to look at AI. They're going to do their research. They're going to look at your website ahead of time before they even consider talking with you. So you need all of those things in place. You need a strong website. You need a great online reputation. You need to rank well in search. Pretty soon, you're going to need to rank well in AI search and iterative search. So you're going to do that through content, through engagement, through adding value on all those digital platforms. And what was interesting is that most staffing companies have a lot of these tools, but aren't using them effectively. And that goes back to that AI keynote speaker that mentioned these tools should help you sell more or reduce cost. If not, you have to find out why. Next, people have an expectation for personalization. So we need to overcome our fear of dirty data, but we have to get our team to enter data appropriately, because we are going to use technology more and more and more to create a personalized experience. And it's only as good as the data that we enter. But you can't use that as a reason to hold back and not do it. You need to bite the bullet, do it, and clean up your data. We need to be relational and referenced. What does that mean? So the businesses that invest in relationship building have a lifetime value of a client that's 30% more. So really being a partner, really being a consultant and finding out what their true challenges are, finding out what's keeping them up at night, and then building solutions around that. And we need to provide buyers now with the information they need to sell you internally. Staffing is no longer a one-person decision. That person that you talk to, once you finally do get through to them, is probably going to have to sell you to procurement, to HR, to the CFO, to senior level decision makers, cross-departmentally. How are they going to do that? What are you going to supply them so that they can sell you more effectively, sell the value you provide internally? And then we need to make sure there's value alignment. So great service is a must, but today's buyer wants to make sure that your company has a stand, that they are aligned with the buyer, they are aligned with the candidate. And the point was that we can no longer sit back in the shadows. We have to be okay with taking a stance, and maybe that stance not aligning with everyone. And this one is especially scary for me. I don't know that I can do it, but the buyers that are coming in now, the younger generation, want organizations to have a social stance on key issues. And then innovative differentiation. 70% of B2B buyers say innovation is an important factor when they're choosing vendors, and they're willing to pay more for companies that innovate. So what are you innovating in your space? And now, Lindsay, I'm going to finally pass it over to you and talk about digital differentiation.
All right. Thanks, Brad. I really enjoyed this session because differentiation is a hot topic that everybody is talking about, and how can we get there? So this was why you should double down on digital differentiation. It was from Jeff Newman, who's the Vice President of Product Marketing, Enterprise, and Salesforce of Bullhorn. And a lot of the data that he was sharing with us was based on Bullhorn's latest annual Global Recruitment Insights and Data Grid survey. He really focused on how we need to adapt to the different generations. We have 4 different generations in the workforce right now. And he talked about how we need to speak to these generations in different ways. And he said, I bet a lot of you think that Gen Z is more interested in images and TikTok and Snapchat as a way of communication. But their survey found that 44% of Gen Z prefer email communication regarding a job, and email was the #1 way of communication that all of the generations wanted to receive their information. So email is still very important to be included in how you are connecting digitally and communicating. It's the one source that across the board everyone wanted to continue to receive. We need to be mindful of how we differentiate messaging for each generation. Everybody is different. Everyone has a different style and a method. In the younger generations with millennials and Gen Z, there could be texting. There could be email, of course, because that is the #1. Phone calls, they steer away from a little bit, but trying to make something as easy and as techy as possible for the younger generations saw better results. Motivations in the workplace and for those seeking jobs are really changing, and you need to understand what people want. And this kind of ties back into what is that method of communication that you are integrating in order to meet each one of this generation's needs and how they communicate. The #1 reason people do choose a staffing agency or a recruiter is there access to jobs? That was #1. Is there a way to simplify it so I can see it and be part of that? And then getting digital. They want that access to be mobile. How can they get to it easily? Is it easy for me to upload a resume? Is it easy for me to find a job? And making your website accessible, whether it's via desktop or mobile, and really focusing on getting those jobs in front of candidates in various ways. And the path to differentiation is really, you need that strong data behind it in order for it to work. So Jeff spoke about different ways you can implement for differentiation. And one of them was unleashing that automation. And how can you make this better and more simplified for your recruiting and sales, and getting the automation process moving, and setting policies for securities, compliance, and regulations on this. Choosing your right tech partners. Who are you working with to make sure you have the right tech stack, and making sure that you are building this within inside of your company internally, and then externally to get those candidates in, and really unlocking your full potential is what Jeff's takeaway really focused on. It was, you have to do this. How are you going to do it? And do not remain stagnant. This is not a static situation. We need to move with generations, move with the times, and pivot to where we need to be to have that digital differentiation. And I am going to pass this one off to Matt.
Thanks again, Lindsay. My talk here, I'm going to recap, was with Rob Mosley, and I'll try to bring as much energy as him. And he talked a lot about trust with teams and being vulnerable. And the best teams, whether it's a leadership team, your team at a company, a sports team, whatever team you're on, there has to be vulnerability, and trust and vulnerability go work together, and really being comfortable, being open with each other and sharing that information, and then jumps into all these dysfunctions of a team. And we've seen all of these at some point when we've been on a team. And there's a really big difference I felt as a takeaway of accountability was the word I want to focus on, because if we don't hold each other accountable, if we can't trust each other, and there's a difference between being accountable and being rude and mean to each other. But for example, if I'm on a team and another member of the team isn't paying attention to the details, that's a problem. I can't trust them. But then can the rest of the team really trust each other if we aren't holding that person accountable for not doing that? Just one example, but trust is really important to finding success on those teams. It's a area that never stops. It can't be taken for granted. It must continually, to be aware of it and working on it as a team. Rob gave a great process on that's focused on pacers. It talks about, you pause, you acknowledge, clarify, expand, respond, and seek. So it makes sense when you see it, but it's a really respectful way to build that trust, hold each other accountable, where I might not agree with what you're saying, but let's take a deep breath. Let's talk about it. Let's work on some different alternatives that might find the other person's needs and find a way to agree on something at the end. And it's human nature to have, for a lot of people, that conflict is uncomfortable, which is okay. It's acknowledging that and understanding on the best teams, you can overcome that. And I thought this was really interesting at the end, that Rob was saying everything in life is neutral. We decide if it's stressful for us, if it's stressful for our team, and how that affects everything. So it's an interesting takeaway I had that can be tough to understand and see, because we might just think everything is stressful or something really triggers us. But if we change that viewpoint to something being neutral, we can decide how much stress it has on our lives. And after that, I'm going to pass it over to Susan.
Sorry about that. All right, so full disclosure on this. I did not attend the session. I'm filling in for David, so please no questions. I may not be able to answer them. So this was a panel discussion on designing and executing a winning M&A strategy in an uncertain market. And they gave the statistic in staffing, there were 234 deals in 2022 and 184 forecasted for 2023, with healthcare and IT as the top segments for M&A. And so transaction multiples. That's what everyone wants to know, but as the panel pointed out, there isn't one answer. Tends to range from 3.5 to 5+. And think of a Rubik's Cube, put the right pieces in the right place to get the most for your company. Size matters, bigger companies sell for more. Industry segment matters, high margin, high demand equals a higher multiple. Location matters, but just in some verticals. Having a strong management team below the CEO is critical. You need clean financials that have been reviewed by a CPA. Quality of earnings will definitely be measured. And ideally, no client is greater than 20% of your revenue. Have a strong growth plan for the future, and ensure your business is well organized. Defined operating processes, sales, and recruiting systems all in place. And thank you for no questions. And now I'll pass it over to Kathy.
Thank you, Susan. This session, the room was packed, and it was actually standing room only. It was a very interactive session, and they shared a ton of great information. So I'm just going to really share my key takeaways from this. They started off this session with some powerful information, right? So SIA's information from 2022 revealed that the direct hire market was worth about $14.9 billion. And the top 34 firms only held about 24% of that, showing how scattered it is. With each of those top firms having less than 1% of the market share, it makes it a wide open field for ample opportunity for growth. So with that said, there's so many specialties in the fragmented market, and the panel talked about how there are riches in the niches, which I really thought was cute and catchy. It's important to choose a specific niche. They also said, and I'm stealing quotes, so I'm doing quotes, focus on an inch, but go a mile deep into it. So really be laser focused. In doing that, you'll position yourself as an expert or a specialist in that area. For instance, specialize in placing dietitians for hospitals and nursing homes on the East Coast, or placing accountants in the Midwest for only manufacturing firms. So really get focused on what you're doing. There are huge benefits to being laser focused. People will know who you are. Speed to market, because you'll already have a slate of candidates because you've been building relationships over time. You'll have early access to talent because they think of you first. And you'll also have the opportunity to grow your business much quickly, right? Being a specialist in that specific area. The panel shared that scaling your business doesn't always just require hiring more people. So they shared a couple of different ways to do that. So you can achieve growth by climbing the organizational chart and expanding your specialization to different levels. So for example, if you're currently focused on entry-level positions, consider moving up the organizational chart to target higher level roles, even management and leadership. And in some cases, you may already have those contacts in your database because they're someone's boss, they're a decision maker, they're a reference, and then you can look at them as your clients. You can also shrink and stretch by specialty, by niche, or by geography. So if your specialization is broad, they recommend focusing on a smaller geographic area. If you're highly specialized, then you can easily expand your geographic reach. And they actually said you should. So don't just focus it on the East Coast, make it nationwide. You can expand your profession. So Nick, one of the panelists, had shared that his background was in accounting and finance in the Bay Area. And at the time, the market got a little tight for a little bit, and he noticed no one was doing tax, treasury, and audit, which was part of accounting and finance. So he shifted his focus and became the guy who knew all the tax people. So that was really beneficial for him. You could also consider adding different solutions to your offerings. So for example, you can transition from contingent direct hire to engage or retain searches, and they even explored the idea of bulk hiring. And last, but definitely not least, with more than 10,000 direct hires in the US, it was discussed how important it is to stand out and differentiate yourself from everyone else, kind of what Lindsay was talking about. Pretty much everyone says the same thing on their website, and they're using the same technology. So you need to consider all of the other things that make you different. And really, you should focus on defining your purpose or your why and what makes you different, what makes your team different, what you can offer your candidates and clients. Share stories and testimonials on how you help people so that you can build that trust and transparency. Ultimately, people have relationships with people. So your personal brand, your team's brand, are what makes that unique selling point to make you stand out and what makes companies want to partner with you. And lastly, they talked about making sure that you continue marketing. So proactively blocking off time every day to source, recruit, marketing to stay top of mind, maintain communication with both candidates and clients. And when you're recruiting for a single position, it often means that there's other great candidates left. Well, don't stop there. Keep marketing those other candidates to similar jobs so you can make the most of your expertise in that particular industry. Brad, back to you.
Terrific. Thanks. This next session I thought was terrific. It was a group of industrial staffing companies, staffing leaders, and they shared the tracking models and metrics that are most important. And most of them had centralized services. So they looked at admin, payroll, insurance, all handled at headquarters. They had local sales reps and recruiters that were solely focused on revenue generation. They didn't want their recruiters doing low-level sourcing. They didn't want their salespeople doing initial lead gen. They wanted to make them focused on closing business. So they did that by creating appointment centers or call centers that handled all that. So one organization said that each one of their appointment centers, and they had, I believe, a team of 9 or 10, they were focused solely on generating 14 appointments per week that their salespeople in local markets could follow up on that were already set for them. Makes them way more efficient, help drive a lot more revenue. The sales rep, again, is focused on those relationships and closing. Then they also, one other had, and I thought this was brilliant, an outbound call center focused only on Indeed applications. So when a applicant from Indeed applies, within 15 minutes, they are getting a personal phone call to make sure that their recruitment dollars are effective and their time to fill decreased dramatically. It was a great, great approach to personalization. And then the KPIs that they were measuring really kind of varied by panelist, but they said inbound, outbound call activity for the recruiters and salespeople, the number of fills, contract signs, but what it really boiled down to across the board was how much gross profit they were driving. Another looked at employees paid, new order conversion, but again, gross profit. Another looked at total hours billed, headcount, turnover, and fill rates. And one interesting point they pointed out is that when they focused on lowering turnover rates, their workers' comp costs declined a ton because they didn't have people that were new on assignment that didn't know safety protocol, and their claims went down a ton. And then the final was, again, gross profit per person. They looked across the average of the company and then at the individual level. And they also looked at what percentage of applicants that came in were placed and what percentage of prospects led to a paid invoice. All these help them drive more efficiencies in their business. Lindsay.
Yes, so the panel for the healthcare sector was specifically on the practitioner's point of view. So there was a mix of opinions from healthcare professionals on the panel to talk about what kind of goes unheard in agencies and working with recruiters, and how they're able to share what the policies and processes look like. Communication was the number one item spoken amongst all of the panelists. How to retain and attract those in the healthcare industry need those details. The recruiting agencies need to have those details, and their time is valuable. We know this, of course, that they are around the clock. They are unable to maybe get to their email right away, but this comes down to another differentiation. Can you text me? Can you try and implement this into your process of reaching out to me? The text is great. The time is hard to do, and they need to be more accessible, and agencies need to find different ways of communication. Pain points that need a solution across the board were the same, finding a way to be more efficient with paperwork. There's so much that goes into getting someone in the healthcare industry on board, and the paperwork is tedious and time consuming. They all had that wish list of how can this be easier for me? We need to find a solution to automate this paperwork and credentials, and they really need advocates to be behind them. So the recruiters need to be an advocate and a guide for their career path. And then they'll continue to come to you. And one of the practitioners, she was actually a remote travel recruiter, said a recruiter can make or break a relationship. If the communication is there, they will stick with you long term. And I am going to pass this off to Susan.
Hey. Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, this final session that we're going to be covering was the top 3 secrets to differentiate you and your company in a crowded market. And this was presented by Will Matthews, who's the president of Matthews Performance Group. Now, I'm not going to be going through his actual top 3 secrets because the context needed would take too long. But I did have 3 key takeaways from his presentation. The first one is the things we control are all internal. And he used the phrase emotional flexibility focus, meaning the ability to regulate one's emotions according to the demands and context and the situation. Second was operate with a permission-based mindset. And before, he said most people fear failure. But before he told us that, he had us do an exercise where we all had a Post-it note where we were sitting, and he told us to write down, today I give myself permission to, and then fill in the blank. And 7 out of the 8 people at my table wrote down failure. So he definitely proved his point there. And the last takeaway was put your weaknesses into the past tense. So if you phrase your weakness like, historically, I'm not good at, it changes your mindset, kind of like prophesizing something. In this case, prophesizing a change to your own weaknesses. And now I'm going to pass it back to Brad.
Yep. But Susan, I'm gonna have you kick off our lessons learned by doing your best David Stearns impression again. So cover David's lessons if you don't mind.
Oh, Brad, I thought you liked me as a colleague. You know, like actually imitating your boss publicly is career suicide. So just imagine David's voice as I'm going through his lessons learned. So David's first lesson learned was know your influencers. And remember, this is David talking. No, I'm not talking about the Kardashians. I'm talking about people who influence staffing buyers. Selling is hard, especially in a down market. But there are people who have access to and influence over the decision makers you're trying to reach. Build relationships with them. They can greatly shorten your path to a sale. Second one, trust your experience. We had a team member who had to cancel at the last minute, and we found out 4 hours before he was set to go on stage to give 2 different presentations. I took one, Brad Smith took the other. While it was a bit nerve-wracking, taking the stage with no time to prep, falling back and trusting my own industry knowledge and experience resulted in a talk that I'm very proud to have given. Next one, we overestimate the impact of technology in the first 2 years and underestimate it in 10. I love this Bill Gates quote that the Wednesday morning keynote speaker referenced. Right now, AI help reality. However, within 5 to 10 years, AI's impact will be greater and likely far greater than the hype we see today. The challenge is to learn now and prepare yourself and your company for the changes that are coming. Next one, when you're struggling, focus on the basics. In a down market, the key to success is to focus on the fundamentals. Make calls, get closer to clients, sell and recruit better, improve service to clients and candidates. It's not rocket science. The companies that survive in a downturn and really thrive on the rebound are those that execute well. And finally, when you're struggling, focus on the basics. Find your niche. How can small companies compete with global giants? By finding niche markets where they can be the best in the world at delivering value. That niche might be a specific skill, discipline, industry, or vertical market, geographic region, targeting a specific size company, or focusing on specific problems to solve. The more focused your business, the easier it is to differentiate and beat the competition.
Great
And
job.
now,
Great David impression, Susan.
thank you. We'll have to get his rating on it.
Yep. I had a couple takeaways. Number one, I loved that concept of ambient technology. And again, we wouldn't think of ambient lighting as life-changing, but without it, we would struggle to do our jobs. Take that same approach with AI and embrace AI. Next, required skills are tanking your recruitment efforts. And there was one session that said 88% of qualified candidates don't make it through the vetting process because they don't match all of the required skills. This might get worsened by the use of AI. So push back with your clients on those required skills and make sure, because there's 1.5 job openings for every unemployed person out there. We have to adapt. And then heart will overcome hustle. If you can get your team to approach every sale, every client relationship with building that personal connection, caring about the prospect and caring about the solution that they need, as opposed to force fitting them into something you're trying to sell, you're going to have way more success. Susan, I'm going to pass it back to you, but you can be yourself this time.
Thanks, Brad. All right. So my 3 takeaways. AI is on everyone's radar. But figuring out how to incorporate it in sales and recruiting is still a work in progress, and we'll just have to figure it out together. My next takeaway was I've been in the staffing industry for over 30 years, and so I've been through a lot of economic ups and downs. This particular one, I am feeling like staffing companies are more proactively preparing for an economic downturn, much better than they have in the past. And finally, this is your favorite one, Brad. Elevators are a great place to network. It became the running joke in our booth that people kept coming up and saying, hey, I was talking to you in the elevator. And really take an opportunity for that elevator ride just to network with your fellow staffing industry people. And it's amazing what you can find out from floor 14 to floor 1. All right. And now I am turning it over to Kathy.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, I had a couple of different takeaways from Staffing World, which was amazing. Brad already covered most of this for staffing, the 4 A's per Coach K. I thought he was awesome. I really enjoyed it. Personal reference there for myself, but just remember to be quick to respond to market changes, adapt to the different industries and roles, make sure you're matching the right candidates with the right jobs, and maintain a positive attitude, right? Power of incremental change. I just wanted to share his analogy, which I thought was really great. If you actually wanted to lose 10 pounds, so this resonated with me and I took notes, you could take 1 square of chocolate out of your diet. It's 40 calories. Then every day for the next 100 days, remove 1%. And if you do that for 100 days and did nothing else for a year, you'd lose 10 pounds. So I'll update you next year and let you know how that goes. AI is here, there, and everywhere. Don't be afraid of it. AI works better with a human. So AI is great at handling big data really fast, but it doesn't have the things humans have, like the gut feeling, the creativity, the ability to make judgments. It doesn't have empathy like humans do. So when they work together, they cover each other's weaknesses and they work really great together to provide great results. So don't be afraid. Everyone was looking for advice. So much so that I was very busy at the booth. I didn't get to attend all the sessions, but thank you so much for my team for sharing all the great insights and feedback from that. And scooters are fun. I conquered my fear with Lindsay. I was afraid of scooters, of getting hurt and all that stuff. So I kind of just took a leap of faith. I enjoyed it. I laughed. I didn't get hurt. I'm here. And I cruised the streets of Charlotte. That's it. Lindsay, take it away.
He was having some tech difficulties, so I'm not sure if she's
we lost
there
Lindsay.
right now.
I'll jump in and do my best Lindsay impression. So she loved Coach K's view on recruiting for your team to make it strong and successful. Again, focus on talent, but talent can't be the only factor that you look at. Skills can't be the only factor you look at. You need to make sure that they fit in your company culture. You need to make sure that they have strong character. So they fit in and they're moral, they're honest, they fit into the character of your organization. And AI could potentially be the future of differentiation. If you're not yet, research and start implementing it. I mentioned earlier, but we're going to be doing a webinar. Our next lunch with Haley is going to be all around AI and how to use that to help differentiate your organization. And one of my favorite lessons, heart, not hustle. Always go into a call or a conversation or relationship with a client or candidate without the sale in your mind, but about building trust and solving their challenges. And if you live this every day, closing will be a non-issue. And the goal heading into 2024 for staffing, find successful tactics to reach more candidates and clients. Marketing will truly help you. And Matt, take us away.
Bring us home here. AI is obviously a big topic. It was a huge topic at the exec forum earlier this year where it felt like we needed to implement this right now. Bringing it together with Staffing World here and off that keynote where, the Bill Gates quote, 1 to 2 years, we overestimate, 5 to 10 years, we underestimate. Everybody understands they need AI and some artificial intelligence tools. If you walk through the vendor hall, there were a ton of options. Nobody really knows what they need or how to implement it into their tech stack. That's the challenge. The companies that can understand that will win because we underestimate that 1 to 2 years. But if you can figure it out really quickly, you're going to be able to beat your competitors. This one, talking about recruiters and processors, was a theme I wasn't expecting, but I heard it from so many people, especially on the last day of Staffing World. It just stuck with me where a lot of recruiters, it seems like, are just doing admin tasks. And a way to evaluate that as a company is have recruiters track their time, percentage of their day actually recruiting versus percentage of the day actually just processing paperwork or scheduling whatever they need to schedule for candidates. Look at that breakdown and does it fit into your business model to be successful? Then lastly here, this is from the keynotes, but put the ego aside. And even from the talk I saw with Rob Mosley, trust has to be there with teams and teammates that can work together and trust together using their strengths while not being selfish will find the most success. We heard it from Coach K, who won multiple gold medals in national championships, Dominique Dawes, who was an Olympic gold medalist, when they put the ego aside and the team puts the ego aside, that's when they were literally the best in the world at what they did.
Terrific. Thanks, Matt. Now we have a few good offers to wrap things up. If anybody does have questions, if you want more information or insight into what we talked about today, if you want the recording, if you want slides, reach out, give us a call, shoot us an email. We will be posting everything on lunchwithhaley.com so that you can rewatch this or dig in more or download the slides. We are also offering a free CRO site review. CRO stands for Conversion Rate Optimization. When sales are tough, when recruiting is a challenge, we need to make sure that our website is acting as a recruiter. It's acting as a salesperson and never takes a vacation. It works 24 hours a day. And this will go through a 30-point review of your website. Make sure that you're driving as much value and inbound leads from your website as possible. Go to haleymarketing.com/website review, and we'll do that for free for you. And you'll get some great key takeaways that you can implement on your own, or we can help you implement. Next, we wrapped up last month our Smart Ideas Summit. Some of the smartest ideas from the smartest minds in staffing. We had many of the speakers that were at ASA, some that weren't, give terrific, very thought-provoking seminars, all in 20 to 30 minutes. Amazing key takeaways. All of that is recorded and available for you on demand at haleymarketing.com/smart ideas. And I referenced it once or twice during our webinar today, but our next Lunch with Haley will be on AI and the future of the staffing industry. And I am excited to spend my birthday with all of you. It's happening on Thursday, November 8th, and it's going to be a great event. We'll walk through how to effectively use AI to help with recruiting, with sales, with marketing, and with some other items. You can reserve your seat at lunchwithhaley.com. Want to thank everybody who stayed a little late. We had so much content to get through, but I hope you found value in today's session. And be sure to sign up for AI and the future of the staffing industry, and we'll see you soon. Take care.